Welcome to the 21 Report. I'm Frank Pesci, and I'm here with speaker Pat Stedman. Pat, how are you?
I'm great, Frank.
Thanks. Pat, you are known as the world's most controversial dating coach. Is there any truth to that?
I think so. Yeah, I think there is some truth to that.
Cool. So what is the nature of your work in regards to dating then?
Well, I've been doing this since 2015, and I think my work's evolved quite a bit over the time period. My big focus in this field is to get guys with women in a more serious dynamic, the women that they want, right? And to help them to understand female nature. But I'm also very much like, it's not just a clinical thing for me, it's very much like I want to understand why there's so many different opinions about what men and women are attracted to. And so I came into the red pill space because there was a lot of manosphere, et cetera, because there's a lot of really interesting insights there. But I've also taken sort of more mainstream relationship advice and stuff from spirituality communities, and I've tried to bring all this stuff together and try to understand, well, why does this stuff work for some people, and in what context does it work, and why does this other stuff work in these contexts? So I'm creating a unified theory of attraction.
Interesting. Have you written any books or done any unified work?
I got one in the pipeline.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Fantastic. When is that expected to be released?
Probably spring next year.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, Pat, you're a returning speaker to the 21 Summit, right? So you have an opportunity to interface with your fans. What's that like?
It's great. I mean, I was here 2 years ago, and it's really amazing to see how many guys come back. So you see new faces, but then there's also this sort of old guard that's really loyal and dedicated. And we had conversations 2 years ago, 3 years ago in some cases, and it's just really interesting to see where these guys have gone and how their life has improved since the prior summit, and they just keep coming back to get that next level.
So you see a lot of familiar faces, you also see a lot of new faces. Is it important for men to come to events like these?
100%. I mean, look, you can get the content if you go to 21 University, and that's great, and I encourage guys to do that who couldn't make it in person. But really, the reason you come to these events is so that you can interface with speakers, but most importantly for other attendees.
Right.
Like what I see here is I see all these attendees, they're getting lunch together, they're chatting, they're sharing their stories, they're connecting. A lot of the guys here became friends from prior conferences. And so now they come together to this, to sort of, check in on each other, and it's like it builds lifelong friendships and like a brotherhood.
It is nice to see people that you've seen in prior conferences and just to check in with them. Hey, what are you up to? What have you been doing? How's your year been? And it's almost like you didn't miss a beat in some cases.
Yeah.
And of course, within the framework of this space, a lot of people are on social media, or they're also content creators. So there's a connection that exists, post-event, where people, can continue to fellowship, as it were. Well, with that, how do you think the event is going so far?
I think it's been great. I mean, it's really, I think the lineup every year gets more and more tight. And what I mean by that is there's the quality of the speakers and the quality of the message is improving year after year. And I think that's creating more of a close-knit community around it. So I like the direction that Anthony's been taking it.
Fantastic. And of course, you had the opportunity to deliver a speech. What did you talk about?
Yeah, I had 3 speeches.
Oh, 3, excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm in this room all day, so I'm missing some of that.
The first speech was just for 21 Studios. I did that on Friday. And in that speech, I talked a lot about consciousness. And consciousness is, it's basically like how individuals perceive reality. So I look at consciousness as this very big filtering mechanism to understand the world. So to what I was talking about earlier, why do these different communities all see things that work, but then they're totally maybe contradictory to each other? And one of the things that I've observed is that certain game tactics will work to women, with women at certain levels of consciousness. So people who are more low consciousness, who are interested in power dynamics, you're gonna wanna apply maybe some more red pill principles to that. But if higher consciousness relationships, while you have to still have awareness of what I would call this sort of red pill dynamics, 'cause it's like the substrate, right? It's like the beast nature of us. You have to understand it because it does emerge and come up, but trying to do the exact same tactics for like a higher consciousness relationship, you're not going to get there. And many women who are maybe more anchored in this higher level, they're just not going to have anything to do with you. So in that first speech, I talked about that, and I helped really break down what frame looks like across different levels of consciousness and how game changes correspondingly as your mindset changes.
Well, how do you discern level of consciousness in the person that you're dealing with?
Yeah, so interesting question. So the pioneers in the field was a guy named Dr. David Hawkins, and he has a scale of levels of consciousness, and you can check it out yourself and you can kind of assess, but basically you have at the very, very bottom, you have shame, and then above shame is guilt, and above guilt is apathy, and above apathy is desire. And you can kind of see how these emotions stack on each other, and how it then goes to like anger, and then goes to fear, then it goes to anger, then it goes to pride. And then you get into higher consciousness realms after pride, where you're in courage. And I won't go through the whole details of it, because it just take a long time, but essentially, each of these levels, the lower the level, the less energy you emit. So when you start to get to these higher levels like love and joy, you're emanating huge amounts of energy, and your frame is more resilient. So one of the things I mentioned, just as like a comparison, let's say you got into a car accident. If you're at a low level of consciousness, it's like, my car's totaled, like my life is over, how am I gonna replace my car? You know, there's like all this fear. Or maybe it's a little bit in the upper bounds of low consciousness, where it's anger. It's like, that asshole like hit my car, like I'm gonna get him in court, I'm gonna, you know, it's vengeance. And then you get to higher levels and it's like, well, you know, it's just a car, like I'm okay, like it sucks, but I'll pick up the pieces. You go higher, it's like, well, what did I learn from that experience? I messed this up, so now in the future I'm gonna make sure I don't do that. This was kind of a gift because, well, maybe I didn't even really like that car, and now I can get a new car. Like there's a recontextualization. And then on the highest levels, you get to the point where it's almost like, so what? You know, like this is, like, it's just another interesting story. Like everybody's okay. Like, would you believe this crazy story that happened to me? Like it's just whatever. So the whole core idea here is that when it comes to strength of an individual, strength is not really about how much you take, it's how you take it. If you don't perceive something as being painful to you, you're far more resilient. And so you see how this anchors in with situations with women, where if a woman rejects you and you're at a low levels of consciousness, it's like, I'm worthless. And so all the stuff is like, how do I deal with that feeling of worthlessness? But at higher levels, it's like, well, you know, there's other women out there, or it's just amusing, or it's like, oh yeah, well, here's what I messed up, I'm gonna learn from that in the future. So your level of consciousness completely affects your behavior downstream and how you respond to things.
So how does one become aware of their level of consciousness and navigate themselves to a higher level of consciousness?
Yeah, well, so the first thing, when it comes to consciousness, I don't want to make it seem like if you're at, like, let's say courage on the scale, which would be like 200, that means that that's the only thing that you experience. Because we all have pockets, like things that bring us down to shame, things that bring us up to love. So it's kind of like, where's your primary area of existence when you respond to things? In practice, people tend to have, when they get into some sort of like rough situation, if they hit a certain trigger, something might trigger them and drop them down, okay. And then they have a way that they get back up. So they might fall down the shame, then they get to anger, and then they get back to their normal state. And you notice this with people over time.
So for me, in my own level of consciousness and awareness, if I end up in a place of shame, one of the tools that I will use is prayer, worship, something like that. That's a mechanism to help me navigate out of a place of shame and into a place of empowerment.
Yes.
That's correct, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Are there other mechanisms that people use? I don't know, self-affirmations, you know, how do they change frame? What is common in the space? I mean, it sounds like you're in the science of the mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people have worse mechanisms than others, I guess you could say, or they have a longer journey back up. Some people get really angry. You know, they'll go hit the gym, they'll like pound the heavy bag or something like that, and then that gets it out of their system. I don't, you know, you asked like, how do you get yourself to higher levels of consciousness? And the funny thing about it is like asking the question is in a certain sense indicative of a level of consciousness.
Okay.
Because like for people who are like around our level, what we want to do is we want to increase our level of consciousness. So then it becomes like something that you get. Like if I go up to this level, then I'm gonna, have more power. And it's like, okay, but the people at the higher levels don't even think like that. So it's like we almost have to, that's why I find the whole thing so amusing. But basically what I would say is that if you do want to raise your consciousness, a lot of it is about letting go.
So let me ask you this. At the higher level, aren't most people who are conscious and aware of their state of mind, aren't they agenda-driven, mission-driven, purpose-driven? Is that a bad thing to be at that level of consciousness?
So there is a very focused level of consciousness that is purpose-driven. Like, I'm going to go after this. The highest levels of consciousness don't actually have much of an agenda. Mm-hmm. They simply are able to like almost enjoy everything around them. They just
state of
draw.
being.
Yeah, they just draw things towards them.
Interesting. Okay. Well, it sounds like you coach clients in this kind of work. Do you see a lot of success in your formula, or do you have to customize pathways for people?
So I use this stuff as a framework. The practical applications of it, let me put it this way. I don't like go through a whole, what level of consciousness are you at? I just use it as something that I think helps to explain what a guy may or may not need. Because if you're at a certain level of consciousness, you have to pace that. So for instance, I have guys, like most of the guys I work with, I would say are higher consciousness guys, resonate with my work. They're not interested in power games, but they have pockets of like shame and they feel like they can't get women that bring them down to that level. And so one of the things, like, I have to help them understand power games and experience it because they're going to be naturally drawn towards it with a woman, even though on a higher level they don't want that kind of relationship. So what happens is they'll get attracted to a woman who's trouble, and what I'll do is I'll tell them, I said, this is what's going to happen, this is what she's going to do, and here's what you can do to parry it, right? Here's what you can do to gain control. Do you want a relationship like this? Like, so I show them how to dominate, but then I deconstruct whether that's actually what they want. And so the way I like to describe it is it's like they're going to go in the quicksand with some girl who's trouble. I said, okay, I'm just going to put the rope around you and I'll go in and then I'll pull you out. And
you'll learn a lesson.
You learn the lesson. And this is how I get them through to collapse those lower levels of consciousness, and they can move into healthier relationships.
So almost like a father fathering a child, they allow them to get, exposed at low risk situations. Like you bring them to the stove and you say, this is hot. And you take the child's hand, you put it near the stove and say, hot, don't touch.
Yeah.
It's almost like that. You're allowing people to fail small so that they can succeed big.
Correct. Yeah, it is very much a mentoring role like this.
Got you. What are the common pitfalls that men have in this generation?
Well, this generation, the games are so out of control. I started doing this in 2015 and I got into, you could say, the game in 2008. We're looking, depending on how you want to look at that, 8-15 years in the past.
A lot of changes.
Oh my God, out of control, out of control. Even since when I left, being single, was I guess about 8 years ago or something like that. It is so superficial and so manipulative now. But the flip side of it is that a lot of women, while they are playing all these games, and guys have to navigate this, and it's difficult to have healthy relationships. Mm-hmm. On the other side, I do think a lot of women are also tired of the games. So my perspective is we're really hitting this point in society where everything's so fake and messed up that people are still going through the motions with it, but there's not as much of a staying power for it as there used to be. There's more and more, once a guy breaks out of it, I've noticed more and more women breaking out of it.
That's good.
And then, it's very good. It's very good. Because I think, it's almost like there's trauma saturation. it gets to a certain point where it's like, we can't keep doing this anymore.
The human experience has been hijacked by, I don't know, digitization and, you know, fake profiles and this kind of thing. What are some of the tactics that you're teaching men how to counter that evolutionary idea that has affected relationships so dramatically?
So like this sort of fantasizing about if a girl is being fake online, is that kind of what you mean? Like,
well, what I'm saying is there seems to be a concerted effort to eliminate the human experience. Mm-hmm. And in eliminating the human experience, you have less time to interface with people, exchange energy, mm-hmm. exchange ideas. Like back when I was dating, you know, that was before 2005. Mm-hmm. It was very different. You would go out on a date, you'd have dinner, you'd meet, you'd hang out, you'd spend time together, you'd go to a ball game, you got to know each other, you met families. But it seems like today everybody's persona is encapsulated in a profile, and all this information is presented to you as a set of data, mm-hmm. whereby you have to make a decision about who this person is. And then once you actually do get together, seemingly, you have to pull back layers upon layers upon layers of the onion to find out who you are really dealing with.
Okay, great question. So there are two facets to this. The first is understanding manipulation in general, understanding when a woman's being fake. So it's one of the things that I talk about very often with guys. And I'm very good at picking up sub-communication. So you have girls who put on this front and they can, I call it girl game. I think it's probably one of my biggest contributions to the field is talking about girl game, because most guys are talking about how to game girls. And I'm like, okay, but also understand how they're gaming you. Because the way girl game operates is it plays on a guy's ego. So a guy can feel like he's like the best guy at picking up girls ever, like this girl's so into me, but he's actually being manipulated. And so this happens a lot, especially in the online space if you're meeting a girl online, especially even if you're meeting her through like social media and she's trying to LARP with your values or whatever, because women are constantly adapting. Okay, what do guys want? Let me put on this mask and then I can get his attention and get him invested in me. So I teach guys to view that, and whenever they start to get overly validated from a girl who doesn't really know them that well, I'm always like, watch out, watch out. And I'll tell them, I say, but then go explore it so that you understand for yourself. I never say, don't go with this girl. I say, if you feel called to continue with her, then do it, but keep your eyes open. That's the first part. The second part, though, is the acknowledgement that we're part of the problem as guys. And so you have all these fake girls who are out there who are doing all this stuff because they don't want to get hurt. They don't want to show themselves. But then the guys are doing the same thing because they don't want to get hurt. And that's really what we have today, is we have both sexes don't want to get hurt, so everything's fake. Because if you can interact with a fake profile, then you personally can't get fully rejected.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
So the guys have to be willing to get hurt.
Yeah.
If they want something real.
Which was, you know, the advice of our parents. Just be yourself, essentially.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you know, this is the thing, like, I understand now what the context of what they were saying is, but the problem is that these older generations had so much that they took for granted. They didn't understand why those principles made sense in that context. Mm-hmm. But now, like, we have to, like, relearn the wheel. Like, guys have to go through the whole thing. They have to peel back all the trauma, all the programming. Then that's where their self is. It's hiding there beneath all of it. These older generations didn't even understand that because they didn't have to deal with all these like decades now of psychological operations.
So I've always heard it said, I don't know, maybe through public school or whatever, that women or girls mature faster than boys. Mm-hmm. Does that same truth hold up when it comes to adapting? You talked a minute ago about girl game and, you know, game from the men's perspective. Are women doing a better job of adapting to this new protocol, this new dating environment, this new way of communicating than men are?
I think they're both fucking up big time, just to be blunt about it.
Okay.
I mean, men are torn between the two archetypes of being kind of like totally incelish, like out of the dating game, too anxious to do anything with girls, mm-hmm. or guys who are really just finding where the pain points of girls and kind of abusing them. I mean, I don't want to use that term too aggressively because it's all just back and forth trauma. It's not like they're doing anything illegal. but they just see what the pain point is on a girl, so they'll, LARP as an alpha, the girl chases them, they get laid, and then the other guys who aren't doing that. So it's like there's been an extremity paradigm of guys who are really getting laid and then guys who are not doing anything at all. It's the same thing with women. You have women who are also too afraid to go out there or do anything, and then you have women who just become basically sluts. And I think that this is just mass immaturity on both ends. Both sides don't know how to deal with it, so they either lean into it really aggressively and try to take from the other, or they just shut down completely. Like, one of the things that it's a statistic that you would think would be a good thing, but I actually think it's a negative indicator, which is that teenage pregnancy has plummeted in the last 10 years.
Okay.
And you don't want teenage pregnancy, but the flip side is that, like, this hypersexualized generation, if you actually look at the stats, has less sex than ever. There's a few people who are having tons of sex, they're hypersexualized, but most of the rest of them are just out of the picture.
I got you. Man, there's just a lot to think about with what you've said. I did have a question for you that I thought was relevant, but maybe I'll lead with this. It sounds to me like you know your purpose, you know your assignment, you're carrying it out. How would you articulate that to the person who's meeting you on camera for the first time right here, right now?
What my purpose is?
Yeah, what drives you?
My purpose is to help guys to deprogram, I think, if it comes down to it. I've never really articulated it before, but I think that that's what I do, is I deprogram guys. And I allow them to, and then so after the deprogramming happens, we can like reinstall a new operating system, so to speak. And I think the reason that why I'm good at what I do is because I am very, like, I'm able to piece apart these various beliefs, these little scripts. Like, you can tell a guy, don't be a bitch, do this, whatever, but it's almost as if you can't get a guy to really embody or do something new until you've removed what's already there. And so one of the first things I do with all my clients is I do a 3-hour deep dive. I go through their whole story and I put together the patterns for them. The guys can't see it. They might have like a idea, like, yeah, something with my mom or something with my dad, but they don't see how it all comes together and it's been repeated through their behavior over time. So yeah, I think that's what I do. I deprogram men.
That sounds amazing. Well, Pat, where can people find you?
You can find me at patstedman.com, and I have a blog up there. I put all my old emails. You can get on my email list, which is patstedman.com/opt-in, and that's like my core content, because I put out stuff about 3 days a week there. It doesn't get on the blog till like 6 months later. Really awesome community. And then I'm on Twitter. That's my main social media platform, at Pat_Stedman, and I'm also on TikTok and YouTube.
Excellent. For the 21 Report, I'm Frank Pesci with speaker and world's most controversial dating coach, Pat Stedman. Thanks for watching.